Hi, I'm Ronnie Meek, and welcome to the Unbelievers Bible Study, Session 17, David. Of all the kings who have ruled on earth, few can come close to matching David in terms of fame. And in terms of enduring fame, it's arguable that none can match David. David's story is found in 1st and 2nd Samuel and also 1st Chronicles, but his name and influence is seen from the Psalms to the Gospels. He was not a perfect man, but he was called a man after God's own heart. And his throne was established over God's people and ultimately, through Messiah, over all mankind. We first encounter him in his youth. He was the youngest of 7 brothers of a man named Jesse. The prophet Samuel came to Jesse's house and he said, I'm supposed to anoint one of your sons to be king over Israel. Well, Jesse got his sons together and presented them to Samuel, only he forgot about one of them. And the 6 he presented, though some of them looked impressive, Samuel said, well, it's not one of these. Do you have another son? Oh, yes. He's out tending the sheep. We'll bring him in. And when they brought him in, Samuel immediately anointed him to be king over Israel. But he wasn't going to be king for a while. You probably know him for killing a giant named Goliath. What you may or may not know is that when he went to kill that giant, when he went against the giant, Saul, the king, said, here, you take my armor. If you're going to go fight him, take my armor. Now, Saul was the one who should have been going to fight him, but as we've learned, Saul had a fear issue. But he said, wear my armor. And David put it on, but he said, I can't fight in this. And so he went only in the name of the Lord. And he came against Goliath, saying, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. And to this day, when an underdog wins, we tend to say, David defeated Goliath. He was also a musician who brought relief to Saul. When an oppressive spirit would come upon Saul, they searched for someone who could play music and refresh Saul's spirit, and David was that person. However, Saul turned against him, and David had to flee because Saul was jealous. As king, he had success in battle everywhere he went, and he extended Israel's influence and borders to their farthest limits. He also led the nation in worshiping the Lord. He brought the ark of God to Jerusalem, and he ultimately purchased the land on which the temple was built by his son Solomon. Yet, he had a great failing in the matter of Bathsheba, and Uriah. You probably know this story. He committed adultery with Bathsheba, and then he tried to trick Uriah. When he found out that Bathsheba was pregnant, he tried to trick Uriah into coming and sleeping with his wife so that they could claim that the child was his. But Uriah, who was out in the battle with the army, wouldn't do that. He came. David said, bring him to me with word of the battle. And then he tried to get him to go home to his wife, but no, he went and slept on the ground. David was told about this. He brought Uriah in the next night and actually got him drunk and said, go sleep with your wife. And Uriah said, far be it from me to do such a thing while the armies of my lord the king are out in the field, that I should go and take comfort in my wife. And so David sent him back out in the field and had Uriah slain in battle. It's a pretty bad stuff. He was a poor father. He had some pretty unsavory events take place by his sons, and he didn't really deal with it. Amnon raped his half-sister Tamar, and when David did nothing about this, Tamar's full brother, Absalom, murdered Amnon in revenge, and David banned Absalom from his presence. But after 2 years, David was persuaded to let Absalom back in, and the end result was that Absalom rebelled against David and took over the kingdom for a brief while, until he was defeated by David's men and the kingdom restored to David. Well, how can David be a man after God's own heart, considering all his flaws and failings? He was a fallen man, just like all of us. But you cannot attribute all of David's actions to being after God's own heart. To reject God, and I think some people probably would, they go, look, that's God's heart, I don't want that. But to reject God because of what someone else did or was is a flimsy rationalization. There's only one whose actions all perfectly reflect the heart of God, and that would be Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ. So what did make David deserve such a title? Well, there are a couple of things. Repentance. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "These are the ones I look on with favor, those who are humble and contrite in spirit and who tremble at my word." In the matter of Bathsheba and Uriah, David was confronted by the prophet Nathan. Nathan used a parable to hold the mirror up to David before declaring, "You are the man." Now, David could have easily had Nathan silenced. He was the king. He could have had him silenced, gone about his own business. But he did not. He confessed and repented. He wrote the powerful 51st Psalm, which starts out, "Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love. According to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions and wash away all my iniquity. Cleanse me from sin." Jesus said, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy." Was David merciful? Oh, yes. This was an age when brutality was the order of the day, and the king's whim was law. And there are numerous times when David could have, but didn't. Before becoming king, there were 2 specific occasions when he could have easily killed Saul and taken the throne. But he was a man after God's own heart because he refused to take the throne, to usurp the crown, but only took what God gave him as his portion. Yes, that was not the case with Bathsheba, but we all fail. After becoming king, he had many occasions where he could either exercise vengeance or show mercy, and he chose almost unfailingly to show mercy. When his son Absalom led a rebellion against David, David gave specific orders, don't kill him. And when those orders were not followed, David grieved. When he was leaving Jerusalem to flee from Absalom, there was a man named Shimei who ran along beside the army, cursing David and even throwing stones at him. I mean, Shimei's an idiot. And David refused to let any intervene. His soldiers said, "Why are you letting this dog do this? We can take care of him." And David said, "No. Even my own son is rebelling against me. And let him do this. Maybe if it's unjust, maybe the Lord will hear him and return good to me for that." And when Absalom was defeated and David returned to Jerusalem, well, Shimei wasn't a total idiot. He was one of the first who came to meet David and to beg his forgiveness. And David forgave him. David was a barbarian king, make no mistake about that. But he was also a man after God's own heart. Messiah was called the Son of David, and through him, David's throne endures. But before Messiah came, there was a lot going on with the throne. in Israel. And we're going to be looking at that next time when we look at Solomon and some history. I hope you'll join us.